Hi, and welcome to the first part of the assignment, where we are looking at how I applied um, quality teaching methods to my first lesson. So my first lesson was the three lines. So looking at the three lines of illustration, the C, S, and I. So and within from the way I understand quality teaching methodologies to be, I was looking at intellectual quality and significance. So to build a rigorous and relevant foundation for the Year 9 comic unit. And I was using Scott McCloud's Making a Comic across the term as the main kind of um, book for referencing to because it's a stunning book. It really is. The other thing I want to note is uh, the little camera is blocking these words down the bottom. I can't figure out how to move it. Hopefully, I'll knock that out in a little bit. I and I'll try to um, shore that up later. But the 15-minute video was a part of a the way I was thinking about it was as a part of a 45-minute that was going to lead into a 45-minute class. So I was kind of wanting to set the stage and I wanted to tell a story to achieve that, to link people into um, thinking about how they draw. So I wanted to try and get that deep thinking kind of kicking off as one of the key elements of the way I would be using quality teaching methods. So the 45-minute classroom session scaffolds some cognitive skill development and cultural relevance in how it connects to um, the Australian visual arts guidance and what we hope to achieve. Hopefully this works. I haven't recorded in this app before, so I don't know if it's gonna transition smoothly. I'll have to watch it back and see. But first up, we're looking at intellectual quality. So this was um, the how the lesson develops deep discipline thinking. So, and there's a meta language we're working on within this as well. So that falls into the quality teaching kind of methodology. And the lesson introduces some artistic terms, but it's specific artistic terms. So the C, S, and I line, I will give the students a shared vocabulary for describing visual strategies. So the meta language enables substantive communication that supports the higher order reasoning as they analyze. So, because I really wanted the students to think about the scene at the start and where there was a rolling hills and like how our brain reads environments is really important to how we read books as well, and that can vary culturally. If I had more time than 15 minutes, I would have loved to have gone into some more significant cultural kind of connections and like there's just so much to dig into. Like it really is um a lot to go on about for me. I'm pretty passionate about this form of communication and believe that visual literacy is a really, really important aspect and a strength for a lot of people that struggle with literacy. Uh, but to get back on track, the explicit teaching uh, mirrors the curriculum expectations. I don't want to tell people what to do. I want to encourage people to think, but explicit teaching is a part of what we need to do as teachers so students can know what we're kind of banging on about. And we want to introduce and develop visual um, conventions and elements systematically. So there's a way to grab onto the structure of it. And that's what, when I first got introduced to this term, very much so later in my life, the three lines, it blew my mind. Like then when you start looking at things and you break it down to the lines, you can start drawing them. And it's become so much more approachable. So it's deep, like the iceberg in this picture. There's just it looks on the surface level, it looks really simple, not much to it, but you can get into this really deep kind of cognitive kind of like how we view things, how we see things. And it's comic books as well. Comic books you can read and go like whatever they are for kids. But there's so much complex kind of visual interactions going on with them that uh, that you take for granted, like where you have to learn to read visually, where key to read things in a particular way. So that's what we'll look at as well. Uh, uh, the content that's scaffolded, like talking of the comics, like McLeod's decomposition of form into line. Like he talks a lot about he doesn't explicitly talk about the three lines. That's something that I'm introducing. But it helps give that foundation for where we're going in the class. So like for me as a but the accessibleness of McLeod's book being so visually strong helps with the Year 9 students to analyze and synthesize visual storytelling elements. So it has a beautiful way it breaks down how to tell stories. So I think it's a really kind of strong point for um, the content scaffolding. So inquiry-based learning, so starting with an open question, an open-ended. So when I did starting with that visual open-ended kind of problem, I I like I said before, it was about cultivating that their critical and creative thinking. So I like leading in with like a bit of narrative. Uh so something to get like that daydreaming kind of element going. I and encourage that critical and creative thinking. Um and it can also it adds like when you start imagining and you bring yourself into something you're creating, it creates an enhanced sense of ownership and as in one of the readings I looked at the Australian Governmental Department of Education 2023 spoke about um, so starting with open-ended visual problems cultivate students' critical and creative thinking, so enhancing their ownership and resilience. So the lead in of what I started doing spoke to this. So I wanted to kind of like start with this kind of like open-ended, and like as I went through the video I started drawing the scene. In that scene I'm using all the lines before I talk about the lines. That's also intentional. So I wanted to have that, and I didn't explicitly point out everything in it. That's just there as like a little Easter egg for people if they want. So and when we start drawing I want like going forward into the next one, we're looking at character design, we're going to be like just building on this knowledge and this basis for what we're doing. So yeah, I was pretty pumped with all that. Um, so deep knowledge and knowledge integration. So we kind of try to model the decomposition. So the breakdown of complex forms into simple lines. So the whole thing of it is the three lines, you can draw anything. So you start with something simple and you can make something complicated. So where people will look at a picture and get overwhelmed. Like, I can't draw that, but you can draw a straight line, and you can draw a C line, and you can draw the letter S. So how do we use these to kind of start um, building a stronger narrative? Yeah. Integrating visual literacy and mark making skills. So like it's building up. So it's looking at it like it's cultivating a domain knowledge rather than a superficial knowledge. So, and then we have problematic knowledge and inquiry by framing drawing as a decoding a scene. So, what does the eye read first? How do lines cue meaning? So, what are we like the dots for graphs and like how we, the lesson, the idea was to create a cognitive tension. So, as I spoke to before, so they're starting to like will build on like looking at like why like which line best shows movement, like how did we make that feeling of the tiger moving towards us. I And in the lesson we'll look at like deliberate, like we'll have peer feedback in the structure of the 45-minute lesson where they draw something with the lines and then um, take it to a peer and get that feedback and then see if we can improve it. So a bit like the butterfly lesson on the butterfly. I probably should have looked that up, but it's a really good video. Look up Malcolm's butterfly, someone's butterfly. It's a really good. Anyway, uh, assessment for learning and feedback loops. So just the shortness of the trying to keep the video short, um, and kind of just knowing that it's going to follow up and lead into a 45-minute lesson, like trying to encourage practice. And we'll put in like formative checks in there. So I'll be giving feedback to the students uh, and like in regular little moments, and like having cognitive scaffolding so to help deepen understanding rather than only reinforcing the surface skills. And okay. Now we're looking at significance, but before I get there, it's Austin's butterfly. So look up the video Austin's butterfly. Awesome. It is a great video on showing that skill growth and feedback cycle. Anyway, so looking at significant, how the lessons it makes learning meaningful and culturally connected. So connectedness to like in this kind of lesson, it was like looking at like framing it around a comic book. Comic books are pretty common. They have a lot of visual narrative in them. They're easily accessible. They're relatively popular. They link into movies. So now there's a really big world where we're seeing pop culture and the big Marvel kind of movies and how it's like comic books have exploded onto the big screen. For better or worse, depends who you talk to about it. But we're looking at so how this kind of everyday, like the accessibility and the like comic books are really focused on teenagers and young people. So they sell themselves towards that market quite well. And there's a lot of really different kind of narratives and stories being told that people can tap into, from First Nations to and everything in between. So different thoughts on gender or transgender. There's lots of really cool comics out there that are talking to the uniqueness of your experience as well. So you can find something that you really connect with, or characters that you really relate to now. And it's getting a lot better with the representation of women. That's something that's always been a bit of a challenging point with it, especially in the big DC and Marvel world. It's very male gaze orientated, but There's a lot of like really cool female written comics and female led stories. One of my favorites is Hilda, which became a Netflix movie, but the main hero in it is a young girl, and it is one of the best comic books I read. I love it, and I love the movie, like the TV series, it as well. I'm getting off track. It's unlike me. So, everyday visual narratives position learning within an authentic student uh, valued genre. The visual arts support resources emphasize connecting knowledge and skills to context and lived experiences. So that was what that whole book spill was really about. So increasing the relevance and sustaining engagement. So there's a cultural and ethical relevance. The picture. So the thinking about how we read, looking at like it. I would love to link into more First Nation kind of use of line, uh, but I feel I need to tread really carefully culturally because it's not my arts, it's not my position to use their culture without being thoughtful and careful. That's how I feel about it. Like I I love dream stories, and I would love to be able to speak to that artistically, but I kind of have to hold myself back a bit. Um, I find it a very challenging area to talk to, and would like to collaborate with some First Nation artists at some point. I think that'd be really cool to be able to start like speaking to that experience as well. But being a white male in my 40s, I feel like I need to be very careful about how I approach these types of things, so that like I do mention it in the video and the connection to it. Um, but I chicken out and lean away. But so like for the First Nations people, the way they use line, and perhaps I could talk to it more in explicit teaching is like all about the visual communication is so strong. Like it's simple lines communicating specific survival notes. So how do you survive in this area? The song lines, the song line, it's just so incredible. Like passing that knowledge on. Anyway, so line practice does connect to cultural backgrounds, and for some First Nation students, I would absolutely encourage them to lean into that element and explore, or any other cultural kind of uh, identities that like want to explore their own kind of history of visual storytelling. I think it would be really awesome as well. And doing that in the context of a comic, so telling a story about your culture would be really powerful thing as well. So, but I'm trying to like kind of a lot it, well, kind of like this thought and this idea and this potential where this class could go would align with the visual arts for culturally responsive and sequencing and examples. So I could have got more in of that. And uh, narrative, so identity and motivation. So positioning comics creation as a storytelling empowers students to make their own narrative choices. So trying to get as much kind of choice and identity into the storytelling as I can. So sustaining creativity and persistence across a unit. So as the University of Newcastle Teachers and Teaching Research Centre, in the article they spoke about how exactly that, like comics empower students to make personal narrative choices. So what's important to them? What story do they have to tell? Gives people a voice. That's why I love zines. So it takes nothing to make and get out there. But you can be a powerful voice for people that feel marginalized. So now, so the inclusivity and accessibility. So the simple, repetitive, repeatable CSI. So framework allows for differentiation. So tracing so easily traceable or template. Uh, some of the challenges with that is making it interesting for students so that they're not, feeling like they're doing a page of spelling. So always trying to put it in an interesting visual context, like the scales of a fish, scale of a dragon. So the sea line, you're just building an actual picture. So something that, when they get it done, it looks really cool. So, it can be a simple thing can become quite powerful to see and can start breaking down that barrier of like, I can't draw. So, because I believe everyone can. Um, So, according to the New South Wales Department of Education, tracing or templates for motor support extension tasks, or even like the way this could work for advanced students, where they could really start building complex pictures, is uh, important. Like, so significance is felt by all the learners through achievable, authentic contribution. So it's not dumbing it down, it's making it so you can do it and building on that kind of positive psychology of you can do it. And if you can do it, what else can you do? So always pushing, like, as someone that's drawn my whole life, I'm still learning. I'm very far from mastering the craft. It is endless. It is huge, and it is amazing to be a part of that journey. It's kind of what we want to achieve. So, and the Australian curriculum, uh, so just talking about uh, short focus modeling videos, but more importantly, I feel that what I tried to achieve in this class and linking to quality teaching methods is that, and what I hope you can see is I put a lot of thought into what I'm trying to block that sun. I thought into what I want to teach and why I'm teaching. And I think that's the cornerstone of QTM. I feel cautious about it as well, because I'm very conscious now of neoliberalism and the impacts of the market. So anything that has a real cool catchphrase that's going to fix everything, I feel very cautious about. Teaching, my mind's really been opened up to how it's not necessarily a quantifiable thing. It's working with human beings. Best practice, so quality teaching methodologies um, need to be loose so they can be applied in the appropriate way for that teacher's classroom, because they're all going to be different. Thank you for listening to me ramble on, and I hope I got most of what I needed to do across in this. But yeah, I hope you have an awesome day, and thank you for taking the time to watch this. I know you're busy, we're all busy, and it's wonderful. But thank you very much. Have a great day.